Hey buddy, welcome back to Pugscast. Myself and Jim are joined this week by the one and only Stephen Ward. Leave it to Stephen to introduce himself.
Yeah, I'm was a regular contributor to the Irish Comic News. It's kind of quieting down during the pandemic, but hoping to kind of get back into the routine of that. Would basically do a lot of kind of reviews and promote any Kickstarters or just stuff that was coming out of a week, something like that. It's just kind of keep people in the loop what's happening in Irish comics, basically.
Cool. Yeah. Now we're changing the format now because we're having people on to interview. We were talking about ourselves for a couple of months. We ran out of things to talk about. So what we decided was we'd send out some questions, and so there's not too many shocks, and they're all comic based, so nothing to worry about. So tell us, what brought you to comics as a child? What was the first thing you read? Things like that.
Yeah, well, I suppose like with comics itself, it's pretty much always there. Like I would have been reading a bit, not like comics, but just like reading in general, like before even going to primary school. So it's like something that the parents kind of saw that I was interested in, and kind of in just given stuff to read and spend time with them. And then I was lucky in that on both sides of my family, people are into comics. Like on my dad's side, there's at least 4 uncles, I think, who collected comics in the 60s and 70s. And then on my mother's side, I had a cousin as well. He would be a few years older than me, but like he lived in London, so he had a lot greater access to comics as well. So it just happened that over time, it's like you'd be visiting relatives, and it's just like there's comics there, and it's easier to kind of jump into that at a young age to read and spend time on that. Like if you saw like a novel sitting there, especially like if you're on 5 or 6 years old, you're not going to be like, yeah, Lord of the Rings, I'll read that just before dinner sort of thing. It's like, no, you'll see Spider-Man or Daredevil, something like that. And there you go, keep entertained. And then because just like drawing and writing in general, it was also that. It's kind of like you'd read a comic and then the next day or so you'd be trying to do your own, inspired by kind of what you had read.
Yeah.
So
that's quite a common thing. We all read Beano, the Dandy, the Victor, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
When we got our hands on American or English comics, and then we thought, I'll have a go at this myself. I'll write something, or I'll draw my own little comic. I'm sure there's lots of people out there who have like a little 4-panel grid at home under the mattress somewhere, of their favorite Spider-Man story with them in it,
Yeah.
That's what comics really are. You can put yourself into them very easily because they're not usually War and Peace, or well, sometimes they are, but especially superhero comics, because they're easier to get into, to understand, you can see yourself doing it. As a kid, it's vicarious, you're in it immediately as soon as you start reading. It's great. So when you started reading comics, was it a special type of comic you started to like? Was it horror? Was it a genre comic?
No, the short answer is no. It would be basically any comic I get my hands on. Like at one stage, like myself and the siblings, I think I would have been 8 and they were all younger, but we all had like a weekly comic. So we did at a newsagent near where my dad worked. So like each week you would have Beano, Dandy, Eagle, and I think it was something like Bunty or that as well. And we all got our own comic. But like for me, it was very much like I'm also getting 4 comics. So yeah, I would read all of them each week, sort of thing. And like with the relatives, I think like there might even be an Anstar reading, because there definitely was what would have been called like girls' comics. Like there was annuals of Bunty and Ginty and stuff like that in the collection. So it was very much like I'd see something and it's like, that's a comic. I like comics. That was literally the only threshold for me to just dive into something. So you'd have horror, sci-fi, superheroes. You'd have all the different types of stories that would be covered under the girls' ones. So it was an interesting mix because, like for some of the superhero stuff, particularly, it was very kind of straightforward and simplified character stuff going on. But then you'd read the girl comics, and it was all about kind of the characters' interaction. Like they weren't generally these huge superpower things or anything like that. It was like maybe they're all like in a boarding school, something like that, and what's happening in the school. So it was just very much like the relationships between them, the other group that they have a problem with, the teachers. Some of them would have kind of branched into kind of mystery for young adults sort of stuff, something unexpected or sinister happening nearby the school, and the group of kids would get involved there, so they would. So yeah, it was just, the threshold was literally just anything that I could get my hands on, and very fortunate then that there was an abundance of them, and yeah, that was really it. It was just like, it's something that really enjoyed.
Jim mentioned one last week, Misty. Completely passed me
Misty.
by. I didn't know anything about it. I had to Google it.
Yeah.
It looks interesting. I was surprised. I'd missed it completely.
Yeah.
It's so crazy, Stephen, because I'm fishing around here because I have a copy of Misty here somewhere. But what you were describing was really common, that there were these and so there's the availability. There's the local corner shop, the newsagent, and the availability of them, and the convenience and the inexpense. So there was it's come up a few times in different podcasts that we've done. Sorry, just before I go on, that they reprinted this kind of Misty special for a couple of years ago, and it was in the same thing. Style as the comics back in the day, and they're very short anthology stories based around horror, but you'd say that they're aimed at girls, just like you were saying, Stephen. They take place in a girls' boarding school or something like this, Terrific story. What was really interesting was that it was almost like a secret, because you couldn't be seen reading a girls' comic. Come on, right? But
yeah.
Here, listen, I've got this going on, and just like you're saying, Stephen, like anything to me, like I remember the idea somebody sent to me one time. Is there, or do you prefer Marvel or DC? And I remember going, "What are you talking about? What?" So Spider-Man is in the same space in my brain as Green Lantern and Judge Dredd and Dennis the Menace. They all exist in the same kind of thing in my head. So I don't know these days about news agents. Do they exist in the same way? I don't think they do. You've got more like the Spar, Mace, those kind of convenience stores, and I'm not sure that the comics exist in that way. Where there's a comics rack. I don't think so. Maybe do you know anything about it? No.
Like I do, I've actually looked now and again, and occasionally you might see like a Spider-Man or something that's coming from Marvel UK. So it is. So it's not your standard monthly from the US. It's like a specially packaged version of the comic done by the UK branch. And then I suppose like the Beano would be the one that you'd see most often, like in the supermarket or occasionally like in the Spar.
There was, I remember hearing, I don't know how true this is, or but it was up until, I think it was up even as late as the 1970s, that girls were the biggest audience of comic books across the board. Like they had romance comics and different things, but girls were the biggest reader of comics. I used to do a thing where I'd swap one of my comics for like 6 of my mates' sisters' comics. So he would just say, "Yeah, you want my sister's comics? Yeah, I'll give you them." for one Beano, he'd go have them, and so and then his sister would go, "Where the hell's my comics? Where's my book?" But that's how I got to read Misty, and there was another one I can't remember what it was. But you reminded me, Bunty and Ginty. I remember those. I just can't remember. But Misty was the one that stuck with me because I like the horror comics. I like that.
Yeah.
That kind of. There's a really, really. I wish I could find it as well. There was a really amazing story where I think it was a ballet dancer or something. There's a really cruel teacher. Teacher's being really cruel. This ballet dancer. And I can't remember but I remember it at the time just really lodging on my mind how, and this is the thing about it, the illustrations were beautiful. I wish I had some older, but those old school British comics illustrations were amazing, just unbelievable. Yeah. Sorry, this isn't, you're our guest, Stephen, this week. I tend to start doing that until somebody interrupts me and stops me. So
the cover of those reminds of Vampirella. She has a Vampirella look about her.
Yeah.
Vampirella was a big influence on me when I was a child. I freely admit it. She came along at the right time.
Yeah, she had two very big influences on me. Yeah, in particular.
Put the movement back 10 years, man. But it is true. Why should there really be a set male-female comic? When you go to the cinema these days to see a movie and the audience is 50-50, unashamedly 50-50. Even for horror, for slasher movies, girls have gotten on board with everything. So why not? And I say girls, I mean women. Like, they're not a different species, But everyone is on board now, so why do we differentiate? Unless they're very small children, let them read what they want to read. My philosophy, I have 3 kids. My philosophy was always let them watch what they want to watch, read what they want to read, play any game they want. But if we see something we don't like, nope, I'm having that. You're not ready yet.
Yeah.
And they seem to be well adjusted, But my wife's that's down to my wife now. She's a very calming influence. I'd be very hot-headed. The last couple of years I've calmed down a lot, but yeah, I can't blame comics for that. Now, comics didn't make me hot-headed. But what were you reading outside of comics? Like, did you read comics all the way along till you turned 18, or were you reading something outside of comics? Like, I gave up when I was 12, 13, I suppose. Like 15, I was better.
Well, I did have a break from regularly reading comics, but that would have been like my early 20s to maybe 25, 26. But all through like what you call school going years, it was just regular. And I'd say the only issue was that I think from around 16, maybe 15 to 18, that sort of age, the availability of the comics got less. So they did. Because at that stage, like the uncles had distributed the comics to their kind of nieces, nephews. So like I got some, so like whatever was coming to me from them was there, and then it was just go to comic stores. And like at the time, I think you'd get something like what was it, the exploits of Spider-Man from the UK Marvel. So it was like 100-page comic, so it was, and you'd have at least 2 issues from the monthlies in it, and maybe like a backup story as well or more. But it was larger than the regular monthly and much thicker, so it was. But it was one of the only types that you would get regularly from the local newsagent. Then you had, was it when the X-Men cartoon was out, there was various Marvel UK stuff that came out. Like there was one that was pretty much taking the episodes and putting them into comic formats. All the artwork and story, it was all what you would have seen like on the telly on the Saturday. You could go into town then and pick up, like it was a weekly, because the episodes would last over a month, so it was. But it was a thinner comic, but all the art style was a direct match of the animation. It wasn't like you were looking at Jim Lee's art or anything like that. It was the cartoon style.
Excellent.
Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, like in books, I just would have again read. It would be more like just whatever interests me. But there wasn't a huge amount of books in the house that did, I suppose. Or at least like not when you'd flip through it or read the summary on the back of it, you just go like, no, sure, I have a stack of comics over there that I know I will enjoy, so I'll just keep going with that. But then like in the early 20s, it kind of went the opposite way, where I was like almost down to no comic reading. I would have read a lot, like it would have been a book a week sort of thing, at least anyway. So, and again, kind of the same mentality as to comics. It's just literally going to a bookstore, have a look around what the different categories are, browse through them. That looks like I'd be interested in that. That's for me then. So it is, and just go through the different genres. Like there would be a huge focus, obviously, on like say the fantasy sci-fi section, because it leans heavily towards the comic stuff. But I go into other just general fiction stuff as well, or non-fiction. Just look at it and say, right now that sounds really appealing. I'll just take that book there. So.
And do you have like a to be read list, a big pile at home that you just go through one at a time? I have paperbacks like that up in the bedroom. Even though I have a little Kindle thing and I read on the Mac and everything else, I still have a pile of actual books that I sit and look at these things and I rearrange them in order. And there must be like 20 or 30 on the go at any one time. And moving them around what interests me, and then I read one. But I read very quickly, and I tend to read 5 or 6 by the same order or the same sort of genre, or like YA or something, to try and get myself in a headspace. But my wife goes, "What are you doing? You know, just shuffling these books. Why are you doing this?" Doesn't get it at all. But I find a lot of people have like a reading pile of comics or a reading pile of books. And when I was a kid, like my grandfather was a huge reader. He was English, and he loved biographies, and especially autobiographies. And his deal was, if you can read that 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, if you read this about Winston Churchill, okay. So I plowed through this to Winston Churchill as quick as I could to get to the Jules Verne.
Yeah.
But I find that I still do that with certain things in life. I plow through certain things to get to the good thing.
Yeah.
I do trade off with myself. Like if I don't know much about comics, because I didn't read them for 30 years or whatever. Like, you know, I only came back into comics. And there's so much out there I haven't read. I've never heard of Misty. I've never heard of a lot of comics people talk about that. Oh, this changed your life. Well, I've never even heard of it. So I have a list of comics upstairs that I get for Father's Day, my birthday, and stuff like that, as like trades or collected editions. And I finally work my way through these things, and suddenly I'm excited about Hawkman and Hawkgirl, and nobody else is because. But yeah, I'm working my way through certain things. People recommend books all the time, and at the moment I'm reading a thing called Nocterra, which is a great premise. You know, I'll see where it goes, but I have to limit myself to so many pages per night because I would just hoover the whole thing up. You know, if I buy something in Forbidden Planet on the way home from town, I'll read through it a couple of times on the bus. And one particular day, my two youngest were with me. They were in their late teens, early 20s, and I got into Saga. And I'm sitting there, and you never know what you're going to get in Saga when you turn a page. And this one of our neighbors, about 15, sat down beside me, and I turned the page, and there's a gargantuan, probably life-size green penis. And I went, closed it, and the look she gave me said a lot. You know, some books should be read at home because you just never know. You know, but Saga is kind of one of a kind, I suppose. Really.
Saga's terrific. I really enjoy Saga. I was just wondering, as you were saying there, is there ever a time when you get muddled because you're reading 2 or 3 things at once, like? And you were talking about your dad making you read a biography in the middle of it all, that you think, it comes back to you in a funny way. Like Winston Churchill and the Hawkmen. I don't remember that. That was
in a submarine,
that's
20,000 leagues under the sea.
yeah, with that the time Winston Churchill and the Hawkmen fought that giant green penis. Oh, that was awesome. That was
You should know by now, when I start talking, you just don't know what's going to come out of my mouth.
you really don't know what's going to come out.
I have a
Can
very
I
non
ask you?
sequitur
Sorry.
kind of mind. You know?
Yeah, there's that, but that comes from your kind of multi-source, your like magpie thing. I was just going to ask, maybe for both of us, that yeah, we had the sort of whatever you would find at the comic book shop. It may not be, you might have missed the previous issue, so you don't know what's going on with the X-Men and everything. So do you remember what was the first series of comics you actually collected? So for me, I'm so old that the first comics that I collected were on stone tablet, but the first one I really sought out and had the entire collection of was the Marvel UK reprint of the Secret Wars comic. So it's 1984 to date me that much. What about you two? What was the first series? Like, I love this. I'm going to collect it every week. I'm going to make a collection of this.
The first thing I collected was Lorna Doone. It was, no one's ever heard of it. It's an adventure series on the Highlands back in the days of Buccaneers and things like this. And I was very wrapped up in it. And they serialized it as a comic. And I'd go to the place called the Bamba, which was a second-hand bookshop. And I couldn't wait to find the next issue. But I kind of had to wait till somebody else had finished reading it and I brought it back to the shop to resell it. So it took a while. It took a year maybe. And I had these little books, and they were tiny little things, half the size of comics, and they were just fabulous. And what I remember most is the covers. It was the same girl on each cover, you know, a little rowboat with huge waves, or a lighthouse, or out on the moors, but she was never drawn the same way twice. They must have had like 6 different artists drawing the covers, and confused the hell out of me. But that was the first thing I actually collected in comics.
Yeah.
But I find a lot of people are younger than me, and they had the boom time with Big Bang and Forbidden Planet and stuff. So it was slightly easier to get into comics and to see an entire run and collect a pull list. Like, as I told Jim the first podcast, I didn't know what a pull list was, and a lad that worked with us, my boss was retiring, and he'd come in, he'd give me the checks. He'd say, right, don't pay anybody on Thursday because it's on a Friday, which is probably true. But anyway, the young lad did sandwiches and met at the shop to us, and he begged me because he had to go down to get his pull list. I went, okay, and I gave him his check. He came back with a bag of comics, between 20 comics, and the very first one was Wolverine. I didn't know who Wolverine was, but I sat down at lunchtime and I read that one comic, and that was it. It was like mainlining crack. I had to find out who Wolverine was, and he is such a varied character. Everyone that writes for him writes him slightly differently, and that got me hooked on comics. And I have a lot of Wolverine and Wolverine related stuff in the house, but the only Wolverine I collected was when they brought it out as Wolverine Unleashed, I think it was, and they eventually made it Wolverine and Deadpool, and then it wasn't the same anymore. You know?
Yeah.
I collected that for like 5 years. I've got a wardrobe with like hundreds of these things, you know, and they're reprints, obviously, but you know,
Yeah.
the art's fantastic on these things. You know? But yeah, what you probably collected every comic there was.
Well, if I had the means to do it, I would have, yeah. But I'd say it was actually when I started reading comics again in the 20s, because I was working at a place, and at the time there was a guy working with us, and he was a regular 2000 AD reader, so he was. So I knew 2000 AD from growing up. I had read some of it, but it had been years, and it was again just, it's there on his table, finished after his lunch. I like comics, have a read. And it was around the time where they were serializing Preacher. So they had like 4 pages of Preacher in it every week. So didn't know what Preacher was, just opened it up, and I'm positive it was the first pages of it. So it's literally, you're starting at the start. Read it, I was just like, okay, that looks amazing. So it does, just because it's just such an impactful beginning to the whole thing. Yeah. And it was, I'd say another year later, then I was like, oh, yeah, I remember that Preacher thing, I must go. But it was in the trade format, so it was, because I was working at the time down in Limerick, so it was easier with the bookstores here. If you went in, it's like they'd have sections where they just have the graphic novels, so there wasn't like easy access to the monthlies that I was aware of anyway. So I was just in the bookstore and then wandering around, and then noticed, like, this one has actually got like a comic section, and then I was like, see if they have Preacher, and they did, and then it was just like, I think a volume a week sort of thing. Just went in, picked up volume 1, went home. Yes, that definitely is what I was expecting. That is amazing. Let's go back, and got all of that. And basically that was into Vertigo then. And it wasn't even particular ones. It was just, I read that and it had the Vertigo thing on it. And in the back, then it would list other titles from the labels. So I just go down, don't know anything about them, just go in, right, have a look at, yeah, okay, that's on Vertigo, and that's Transmetropolitan or whatever other ones, Lucifer, was it Sandman, all that sort of stuff. So it's just literally go through one entire title, get the volumes, and then go in and see, right, well, what else? And that was it. It was just, at the time, it was very much like, look for Vertigo, and then slowly started locking into, like, say, writers, stuff like that. So I'd see some particular names. Okay, that's not Vertigo, but that's the same writer, so it's right, pick that stuff up, just go there. But Preacher definitely was the one that jumped off, where it was like, I have to just get the volumes, I have to get it, I have to see it the whole way through, see what they do with the story, all that stuff. And yeah, that would have been the one that kind of got me really reinvested into comics, because at that stage I was kind of, it would have been like with books, where it's like, yeah, I'd still read them, but I wouldn't necessarily go on my way to pick anything up. And then it was like, discover Preacher, and then it was just like, there's so many more stories than from when I was growing up. Now there could have been equally as many stories growing up, but didn't have the access. Whereas now it's like, you go even into a bookstore, just these massive sections, and it's just like graphic novels, and it's just like, and then the variety as well. Like, you obviously have superhero stuff, but then you get your horror stuff, you get biographical stuff, there's even like news reportage sort of stuff, was it Joe Sacco and all of that. So it's just like, you're building up a wider range. So you are, it's like you're starting to treat it like books. It's just like, it's medium now. It's not a story type. So that Preacher's the blame. That's the short of it.
I didn't know anything about Preacher. I was up and down in Skillen at a convention, and I met these people who were marvelously famous. I didn't know who they were. It's my fault. And my wife kept saying to me, "Who's that man?" I don't know. And we looked on the bill, and he's his name is McNeese. Oh, I've read something belonging to him. I got talking to him, and he said, "I've read Preacher. Now I go and have a look." And the artist was there who did the covers. And I went in, didn't get near that man though. He was vaping like crazy. There was clouds of this stuff coming everywhere. And I met like Paul Carroll, a few people, and impulse buying, I bought Preacher and loved it. And I'd read 4 or 5 of them, the collected pieces, before the TV series appeared. And like, TV series was okay. A lot of differences now, but it was okay. But yeah, you do fall into these things by accident, and it's serendipity in a way that someone says to you, "You're at the right place, right time," and you say, "Well, try that." It could be something you'd never think of picking up. They had a 3 for 2 deal at Dublin Comic Con a couple of years ago, and a lad was there minding the store while people were at a panel, and I was walking around, and I had 2 books I wanted to buy from him, and you had to buy a third one to make up the deal. and he suggested the Black Monday Murders.
Yeah.
Fantastic, my kind of book. And I
Yeah.
bought it by accident, and he suggested to me, "Have a read of that. You might like that." Excellent.
Yeah.
I raved about it, and people go, "Yeah, it's okay," but if you get into it, oh man, it's a mine of stuff. It's incredible. Can I ask you, reviewing? How did reviewing happen for you?
Well, it's kind of like what you were saying there, just by accident. That's the short answer. Was it Chris O'Halloran, the superstar colorist from Cork? At the time, he was doing some for ICN, and he had started doing art picks. So he was doing some regular posts where he just do some highlights of various artists in the scene, what they were doing. And he was, I think at that stage, he had started to get more work as a colorist. So he was very much like, I need to step away from ICN, and just sent us a message one day, and he's just like, I'm finishing off with this, and I was wondering, would you be interested in taking over the art picks? And it was very much because, like, at the time we followed each other on Twitter, but he would have seen like a lot of art getting shared through my Twitter account. So it was just like, you're following a lot of the people in Lavery scene. You're always sharing it, and, from what I can see as well, like would see stuff that I might have missed or anything like that. So do you want to take it on? And I just said, yeah, I'd give it a go and see how we get on. And did that for a while. And there was not like, it wasn't like do that and reviewing. It's just, I started with that. And then the reviewing part kind of came by accident after that as well. Because I think at the time, David, he was busy doing reviews, and I think he had too much on, and he was just like, here's one that I'm kind of stuck on trying to review it. I can't get into the right headspace to review it. If I send you on the file, would you have a look at it? And if you can do a review, great. It'd be a help sort of thing. So he sent on an issue. I think it was called Black Lines. So it was, and like I started reading it, and it was just I can see why it would be hard to get into it, because it was very kind of like an underground comics adult type stuff in it. So it was it like, for what the creator was doing, like they did it really well, but it was like, it was an unsettling comic to read. So I could understand like how you, and then it's like, and then you have to try and express that in a review where you don't say like, I read this and I sat in a corner crying for the rest of the night. you try and like give some idea of the story and what worked for you and that, but it was very much the art style, particularly. It was just like, it was very kind of visceral sort of thing. Like it was somewhat cartoony, but it was just like whatever way the artwork was done.
Is it a drug abuse thing?
There definitely would be some stuff of that in it. All right.
I met the writer, the artist. He's a barber by profession. That's a chap.
It could be, yeah.
He did a Yeti one.
That sounds right. Yeah.
I think another one you made. Yeah, very autobiographical, I think. And as you say, it's very visceral. It's not high end art, but it's what it says in the tin. It's a weird world where drugs have altered everything about you, and you can't get away from it. Yeah, I remember it now. Black Line.
Yeah. So so got that. Put up the review, so I did, and then it was just really, well, because it's on that, would you consider doing this? And then it kind of forked after that, because I would still get stuff from David, but then over time it happened where creators would just contact us directly, and it usually was just because we follow each other on Twitter sort of thing and sharing their work. Oh, I have this coming out, or here's a preview of what I'm releasing in a few months. Would you maybe do a review for it, or to just let me know, here's something you might have missed, and do a review for that. So yeah, it was just entirely by accident all the way through into how to get to ICN. It wasn't like planned to join, and wasn't planned to review. It's just like different little moments lead you to it, and then it's all right, well, I'm doing this now.
So do you find people step into a lift at Dublin Comic Con and say, "There's my book. Review that. There's 50 quid." That's not how it works, like, you know.
No, it's pretty much all through like Twitter, email, or Facebook, that kind of thing. You would kind of be following over the social media sort of thing, and then it's just a book's being released, or they have some teaser art sort of thing. Any chance of throwing that up on ICN just to kind of get the word out there that this is going to be out soon, sort of thing. Like at the conventions, I've had it a couple of times where people that I knew from the scene just through social media, "Oh, hi Stephen, how are you?" sort of thing, and I'd never met them before, and it was purely just because you have yourself as the avatar on your media sort of thing, so they don't know what you are to look at, sort of thing. But definitely not like people rocking up to you in public and it's just like, "Here's a comic, any chance to review," or anything like that. No, it's usually just make contact over social media, and then they drop you a message, and there's a link then to a PDF, something like that.
Cool. And I've always wondered how difficult is it to differentiate being a fan of something and reviewing it? Because I can watch a movie and I can love it, but I can see everything that's wrong with it, but still love it.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah, I would definitely think that it's that kind of thing when it comes to reviewing, because like obviously I'm a fan of comics, and then like so many different stories and art styles that I'd enjoy. It would be very easy to just be like, every comic you get, like, they're brilliant and this is one reason story, and you just almost just giving a synopsis. You're almost what was it, just like an advert for it rather than a review. So it's to try and make, like, for myself, it would be very much touch upon what the story is, and then go into the different aspects that comprise the comic. So what's the writing like? What's the art? If there's color, try and talk about that. That would be one. And the same with lettering, where it's like I still don't have the range yet in terms of talking about it, but I have something there that at least, you know, it's not left out of the review. So it's very, move into it like in a technical way, try to anyway, like, so that the people that are reading the review might go out and pick up a copy, but also that, like, when the creators see it, that there's something that is going back to them as well, to say, because I have, like, there's one or two where I mentioned small things in the comic, and then I get a message from the artist. I was just like, "Oh, I actually didn't notice that. That's really helpful." And because it was done digitally, they were like, I can now tweak that for the next print run, you know. So it's like, but it was just as an afterthought almost in the comic. It was just like, this is a little weird for me in the sequence of the panels, sort of thing. I can't see where one ends and the other is, sort of thing. And it was just a small change to make for the artist, and it was just like, it read better than for me. So it's it's to try and go beyond just what's in the comic, and like something there for the general public that would show up for the ICN posts, but then also for the creative community to try and put something in there, because they're obviously putting a lot of work in to make the comic. So it's like, try and put some effort to put it back towards them as well.
Do you ever find yourself having to back up what you've said? Like, someone disagrees with what you said about their comic, and they've just left college, they've spent a year in a bedroom drawing this book about a fairy, and then they give it to you and you go, "Well, it's blah blah blah," and then they want to tell you, "No, you don't understand my work, my vision," or something like this. Does that ever happen?
Not to my face, or don't communicate. It's not to say that there are some people out there that have read every review that I've ever put up, and they're just like, "He gets it wrong every time. I don't know why they let him post on this site." It's very much like, it could be out there. It's just, I don't know about it, sort of thing. But I suppose if for argument's sake someone did come up and said and had something to feedback, I would just approach it in that I put up the reviews in good faith, so I did. So I was trying to give my best reaction to it, and again covered the two avenues that, for me anyway, when I'm doing a review, you have the general audience who you pick up the copy, and then you have the creative audience, and they're the two kind of things I generally try to aim towards when I'm doing the reviews. So if they came back said like it was really bad, then, and if they can explain why, it's like I would take it on board. Like I have had, it wouldn't be to that extreme, but like I've had where I was doing a review for a comic, and the way I was understanding the art and the story was not the story being told on the page, and I had to contact the creator, and I just said, like, I'm doing the review, but it's just like I have this feeling that I'm not getting it right in my understanding of the thing. So I went back to the creator and just said, like, is this what's happening? And they said, no, you're right for the most part, but there's a little detail in it which isn't. It kind of slightly changed my understanding of the story then. So then I went back and said, right, okay, that paragraph of the review, that's out, because that's not actually happening in the comic at all. I would go again at it. So that, like in terms of feedback, would be the closest, just where, because it's small press, you have a bit more direct communication with it. But generally, thankfully, any feedback I get, and it's mostly through the creators that submit further review, it's generally positive because they're happy. Like, well, here's a site promoting the comic. It's not a site that I would classify like a teardown job. Like I do see some kind of reviews that are done, and it's just like that's into like the level of cruelty. So it is. I can get these type of reviews can be a performance thing, but it's just it's needlessly cruel. So it is to me. Like I would kind of position myself, if I was the person that made it, poured their heart and soul into it, and then someone just like literally just took a match to it, and that was your review. It's just like, why do that?
First book I ever, sorry.
Go on, Jim. Go on. Did you?
Well, the first book I ever did, I'll not tell you what the name of it was, because people can go and look it up and then they'll go, yeah, you're right. But there was a review. It's weird. It's really weird. There was these reviews of it, and I think we've talked about this before. For some reason, people will say, oh, it's great, whatever, but then one person says, eh, and you obsess on that one person and go, what are you talking about? So I got one review, and they went through the story, and the story's about this and about that, and pick up a copy if you want to see some really mediocre art. And I was like, oh man, that was a thing, and I was obsessed by it. I was like, if I could get my hands on this guy. It's a really personal thing, and I think that's why it's my favorite medium. Because, as you say, Ray, people do pour themselves into these pages. They pour themselves out of it. Stephen, is it your favorite medium? Do you prefer video games or movies or something, or is this your favorite medium of entertainment? Books, novels?
Yeah, I would have to say it is comics. Books would come a close second, and then I suppose the only other one that maybe would compare to like how much I'm into the comics would be music. So it is. Like a lot, love music and listen to a lot. Like it wouldn't be as like in terms of the kind of wideness of listening, it wouldn't be the same as with comics. Like comics, I try and just take in any comic that's out there as much as I can. With music, it would be a narrower focus. So, but yeah, it's just again, you can so many different stories, and then the kind of density of them. Like you can easily pick up a comic, especially the monthly ones, where it's just like you can sit down for 10 minutes and enjoy that. So it is, and it's its own thing. Whereas with a book, you always run the risk. You get into a chapter and say, this is really good. It's now 11:30 at night and there's another 7 chapters to go. Whereas with the comic, you can kind of like cut yourself off very bit. Yes, there's other issues, but you can say like, no, I finished this comic. So that's me done now, it's all right. But if you're in a book and it's like, no, this get really good now. I want to keep going. There's so many chapters in it, you know. So yeah, I like the comics, and then like you have the trades, and also when you move into graphic novels, you can get ones that are as thick or thicker than books as well. But yeah, just love the variety of the stories, the different types of art to it as well. Because like definitely after diving into like small press, and especially finding small press over in the UK as well, there's people telling stories in very strange ways. So there is like there's, I can't remember his name particularly offhand, but there's an English comics artist, and it's all abstract. So it is like it is a comic book, so it is, but it's like you can't see like people in it, and there's no dialogue to it, but it is a comic, and it was just like that's amazing. It is like it. You're not going to be like, yes, you can put that on the shelf next to Spider-Man, and everyone will pick the abstract one. It's like, no, the Spider-Man's easier to sell, but it was just like to tell the story in that way, and I suppose because it's so abstract, you could in theory be telling any story, but. Yeah, I like that because I love art in general as well. So I like that I'm finding more and more stuff in comics where, much like art, it's only limited by your imagination in terms of how you draw the page and what stories you tell on the page.
So if you had to choose, which comic or comic series could you read forever?
It probably would be one of like the Vertigo stuff. Off the top of the head, it would be probably something like Lucifer or Sandman sort of thing, because like you have the overarching stories, but every so often you have these self-contained stories as well. And like as much as I love the superhero stuff, it's nice to have something like Lucifer Sandman where it doesn't read like that. Like you could at times you could take out like the supernatural and otherworldly out of it, and the story in some instances would still work. So it would. And I've definitely read the volumes that I have of both of those multiple times. Preacher as well, obviously, would be in there. Transmetropolitan and various other verticals, just offhand anyway.
So if you had to recommend a book or a series of books, without hesitation, without like saying, well, it's fantastic, as long as you realize it was written in the 70s and we're more aware of things now. Just without hesitation, what would you recommend?
Yeah, I'd probably go with Sandman, so I would. Just because I can think of moments in that collection just that definitely stuck with me after that. And it was like, I can remember going into it having little to no understanding of it, and then as the story progressed and the scope of it widened, and just certain events that happen in it, some of the dialogue in it as well. Like there's a scene, I think it is early enough, where Morpheus is trying to get back his powers. So he's going around to different grounds trying to collect it, as far as I remember. But there's a scene in hell, basically, where he has to have this battle with another demon. But it's all through dialogue. It's not like in a superhero thing where, you know, the Hulk and the Thing face off and whoever is unconscious first loses, sort of thing. It's all through dialogue, and they're selecting their answer to the previous statement basically as this would defeat that, sort of thing. So, you know, like a snake to a mongoose and so on. And it just keeps escalating to like where it's like the demon is like, I am like the anti-life, the end of all things, destroyer of reality, sort of thing. And then there's just this really quiet moment where Morpheus just 3 words, and it's just like, I am hope. And it was just like, that floored me when I read it. I was just like, it rings true when you get it into your head. But it's like when the demon had that, it's like, oh no, he's bad. He's not getting back whatever it is he seeks. And then just 3 little words, and that's it. And like even all the demons that are watching, they're just like, that's it, that's over. There is nothing. And the demon, the demon just can't think of something that he's like, I know I can defeat hope. So it was just like, that's amazing. And again, it was like I've mentioned earlier, the types of stories you're telling, the scope of your stories. Yeah, before Vertigo, I wouldn't have thought, you know, you could go that big with your ideas, sort of thing. Yeah, so it's just definitely Sandman anyway.
Excellent. Yeah. I've tried to read it now, and I find it difficult. I think it appeals to people at a certain time. If you get it at the right time in your life, you get it. It clicks with you. I was, I think, way too old. I was in my 40s, late 40s, before I first read a comic. And I read it through Constantine. I read him first, and then I went, okay, I'll try Sandman. And it just didn't click. And I honestly, I gave up because there was so much I had to catch up on. But yeah, it didn't click with me. But other things don't click either. You know, like the massive crossover events like Ultimate Secondhand Crisis on Infinite Earth Part 76. I don't get it. I only have one crossover I like, and that's Blackest Night.
Yeah.
The rest of them, I lose interest very quick. You know, but yeah, I've spoken to so many people that they absolutely adore Sandman. You know, they've shown me tattoos at conventions, and everyone's can't wait to see this TV series. You know,
Yeah.
Because he had such a hand in it, Neil himself.
Yeah.
It's a marvelous thing, you know. I wouldn't say, oh, you like Green Lantern. Well, you know, my friend, you know, the kind of way. I don't fall into that category. It's whatever you like what you like, and it speaks to you. It speaks to something inside you, you know.
Yeah.
And there are books that I absolutely adore, and they're not the best in the world, some of them, you know, but there's something about it that says something to me, you know.
Yeah.
There's one called Birthright that has a lot of plot holes, but I love it. I think it's brilliant. I wouldn't put it in the same category as Black Monday Murders now, but it's definitely one to read and to realize that he's been stringing you along for 60 pages and has been telling you the truth, the writer, you know, and it's so clever.
Yeah.
But there are problems with it. But it's fantastic though. But so when someone says Sandman, I get what they mean. I understand. It isn't for me. That's not to say it's something wrong with it. It just caught me at I bumped into it at the wrong time, wrong place. I wanted more grounded sort of stuff, and it is a very ethereal, emotional comic, you know.
Yeah, definitely.
And you have to buy into that, you know.
We were talking about that, Ray, a couple of times. I think about how a book changes, and it's really odd because obviously a book doesn't change; it's the same book, you know. But you come at it. I was too young to read Watchmen. I read it and I went, I don't get this at all. This isn't. I don't get it. I was too young. And as I've got older, it's changed. I read it every so often, you know. And there's the big. So we should do for these kind of podcasts and interviews, right? Like a series of quick fire questions. Like we always say, there's the Psalms of the Bible. Is what would you say? The Dark Knight Returns and Watchmen, and maybe Sin City or something, or you know, and then everybody we interview, like it's gospel. We just say, right, those 3 or 4 books, everybody accepts they're the best, right? Everybody, okay, we're done. So we don't need to ask those, but then everybody gets to add their psalm or their gospel, their book. To that and say, right, what would you add? Which gospel or which book would you add to it? But the books change because we've talked about this before, haven't we? How the Killing Joke, I remember reading the Killing Joke when I was a kid and it was amazing and all of this. And then as I got older, I go, I don't know if I like this book. I find it really bothersome. I find it really, the artwork's beautiful. It's so beautiful. But I think that's because I've changed, you know. And that's why I love the medium so much, because it can do that. As you're talking about Sandman, you know, I can remember exactly where I was. And I was at exactly that right age that there was this wave of Swamp Thing and Sandman and what do you call? I remember the first one. I got a grant back in the days when there used to be grants for college. I was going to college and I used it to buy Arkham Asylum. The trade of Arkham Asylum had just come out, so 1990 something. So I was exactly what that age. So you're talking about being the right time in the right place, and all of those. I mean, what an age. You've got these bookends of comic creators and characters coming in, Sandman and Swamp Thing and so on. Alan, that genre, that era, that lasted 4 or 5 years, and that was I was exactly that age coming in. So, for example, I would add to my list of the Sams, I would add Night Cries. If I could reach it here, it's on my stand. It's on my book stand here. Night Cries by, is it Archie Goodwin and Scott Hampton? It's a Batman story. Not sure if you two guys know it or read. It's a really difficult book to read, but the artwork's absolutely incredible. Watercolor painting. Night Cries. It came out in 1990 something or other. Somebody can correct me, 1991 or 2 or 3. And it's a lovely, lovely book. People don't mention it very often. And probably it's because there's a real difficult subject matter, which is child abuse, not just sexual, but violent abuse. No, there's no graphic scenes, and it's definitely an adult book. But Batman deals, he stumbles across these crimes that happen, and he gets involved in a story and goes, and in fact, he's accused, or mistakenly accused, spoiler alert, of some things, and so the story plays out, and then there's this whole impotence, and Batman realizes that he's terrified. There's a young girl who's been victimized by somebody, but his appearance traumatizes because he looks so terrifying. He's so he frightens her so badly that she's re-traumatized, and so it's mistaken. He's falsely accused just because he's triggered that she identifies Batman with violence, and he didn't realize that this thing in his armory to shock and to terrify people works, and it works so well. It worked against him. He wasn't able to help, so he's got to deal with that challenge.
Yeah.
Imagine that you're like a 16-year-old kid and you've been reading the Beano and those comics that we're talking about, and then you stumble across this gem, which I just think is an amazing book. It's just a wonderful book. So anyway, I would recommend that to anybody to read. It's an amazing book. But Stephen, you're our guest this week. If you've got to add your Sam of the Bible, is there anything? You've already talked about Sandman, I suppose.
Yeah, you could put in 100 bullets.
Oh yeah,
that would definitely, that would work. Because you're taking it away from like the fantasy of Sandman and then superhero stuff. And sometimes you need like a certain genre to get people in, Don't like superhero stuff. Here's like a crime noir type comic, and it's great, So like, try that out and see how you get on, sort of thing. So yeah, it was great again. Where kind of like Preacher, where it was like right at the outset, it sets what you think is the big story behind it, where it's like you get the briefcase, you have the 100 bullets, and that's the hook on it. And then it's never as simple as that. There's more to it. But it was just even just that as an idea to get someone in. Because like everyone could imagine that whatever way they would handle that situation, but imagine like someone gives you and says, here's 100 bullets, totally untraceable. You can do with them as you will or not at all. But you have that, it is your choice entirely what you do with that suitcase. And then it's the thing of him offer, well, yeah, it is the idea to offering it to people, like he knows they're in dire straits, or it's someone he needs for his bigger end game sort of thing. But you like there are all these different pieces of the puzzle that you don't realize until you get later into the series. And then it's just like, oh wow, there's all this other stuff that I didn't actually grasp earlier on, and now it's kind of coming in together. So yeah, definitely the bullets would get in there, all right.
That's a great series of books. It's really, really great. And great concept, isn't it? It's a really, and I guess that's another thing. Okay, I always talk to Ray about the hell he get your ideas. He has these ideas, the books that we've worked on, that you can run with. You come up with a concept and then run with it, and you explore, really go and over pages and chapters and everything. Really, really explore.
To indie creators, we don't have a big four behind us. We don't have a contract where you can take 5 issues to get the ball rolling. We kind of had to hit the ground running. The first few pages have to grab our readers, and it sacrifices a lot of nuance for that. You give up a lot of secrets as well that you should lay down bit by bit by bit. It's just, there you go. Stay where you are. I'll trust more to show you. And it's difficult when you're an indie because you can either shock or you can tell a measured story, and it's happened a couple of times that we've sacrificed things because you have to grab them. You have one issue to grab them and say, right, take this, buy this, bring it home and read it. We don't have someone behind us, to generate those 5 issues to get to the main story. We can't just spend an entire issue describing a world and building something. It is the worst drawback to indies, that we have limitations, it's the way it is, just recently, this week actually, had this massive story, all nuances and all sorts of things about absentee fathers. It's called Wolf. It's about a werewolf situation in Galway. A local copper has to, show what he's worth. And it was a massive big story. I mean, a massive thing. And then it had to come down to 48 pages. And I tell you, I was off sick this week for a throat infection. But all I did for the entire week was put this story to the grinder. And I couldn't tell that same story. So I took the main element, which is the main character, and the 2 women in his life. I made a menage a trois. I made a different story that fits in those 48 pages. It's the biggest drawback for indies because we just don't have the time. We don't have the momentum, I'll send it to you. I think we were on draft 4 now at the moment. Haley's happy with it, I've put things out in the past that I've been happy with, and I realised later on that not everyone feels the same way.
Yeah.
So I showed to my editor now. She came on last year and she's brilliant. And she goes, I really think that, and she's always right. That's the thing. She's always right. So I'll send it to you, Jim, and see what you think.
Brilliant.
Anything you want to do? Jim has done some concept art for it, but it's a different kind of story than we're used to. And you can say no. You probably won't, hopefully. But,
I'm chomping at the bit to get to the story. I really, really want to do this because I think I need to exercise some muscles because I don't often do my own colors. So we're going to do some color this time, and that's going to give me I push myself, and I think just artists like to be pushed. They like to, some don't, some have their wheelhouse. It's something I always go. My friend, it seems every other episode, I'm calling PJ Oldham, or I'm bringing him into the podcast. He's, I've known him since I was 5 or 7 or something like that. Him and his family, so I'm very, very close to him and his family, and we go back and forth about things all the time. PJ has, I know everybody, and PJ has his fans, and PJ is really well known for his style of artwork, and it's really, but he's so much more diverse, and he doesn't often get a chance to show it. And I'm always kind of push, say, look, do this a bit more. And I completely agree with him, because people now know him, and he's built up a reputation and a name for himself by being him. And you go, like, I'll know his artwork straight away. I can identify, there's a few wee markers in his artwork that I identify straight away. And so there's that balance you've got to do. I want to just, every book is different. It's a different part of me. I could do, different, like you're saying, some abstract work, some this and that, and you can do that if you want, I guess. That's fine, but still, it's good to flex your muscles. You get too sort of restricted sometimes. So hopefully, Ray's going to go, Jim, you're off your rocker, mate. What is this you've done? Come on, just tighten that, wind your neck in, and tighten that up a bit. But no, I'm looking forward to it. I'm really, really looking forward to it, and I'm looking forward to the review in Irish Comic News.
I'm not.
Yeah, you're not.
This is a pared back story. I took nuance and threw it away and said, okay, my first draft of everything is very, very dark. It's really, really dark. And then I have to pull back and pull back and pull back. And hopefully I get it to a point where other people understand what I'm trying to say. This one, it's close to how my mind works. So we'll see how it goes. I did get a review of City of Clowns. Ray's produced a unique world here, right? City of Clowns is a tough one because it's not perfect, but we had so much fun doing it that when I talk about it, it generates a lot of interest at conventions, and people buy it because I'm so excited about it. But I know it's not perfect, but nothing we do is 100%. There's always room for improvement, and we change as we go along. That's how it works. As Jim says, he's making different marks now than he was 2 or 3 years ago. I am hitting different beats on the stories now, and hopefully this main character now will be someone that people can sympathize with, because I don't have too many sympathetic characters in my books. And there's the thing, Jim will tell you, people can say whatever they want about a book. It doesn't affect me. I don't take it personal. In my private life now, and my work life, I take things very personal. When it comes to comics, just give me your opinion. Just say what you like. I'm fine. I'm writing another one next week. So it's a healthy way to look at it. But I do know people who worry about everything. What people are going to think of them because they put this in the book. You're just telling a story. It's divorced from you. Yes, you created it, but you're just telling a story.
Yeah.
And the very first thing I went to was my daughter. Went to a live Pugscast. Storybreakers and our Pugscast were doing this combined thing about they had a script for Avengers, and they were going to act it out and stuff like this. And one of the first things they said was, when they were kids, you couldn't tell anyone you read comics. Whereas nowadays it's part of the zeitgeist. It's part of everything we do. People use the name of a character like Hulk. I hulked out. It's a verb like Joss Whedon does all the time. It's accepted. It's just part of us. So the fact that you like Moon Girl and Devil Dinosaur, that's name. That doesn't seem like a guilty pleasure. That just seems like a pleasure. I'm thinking of older comics that we read and probably shouldn't have, because they weren't aimed at us, or I remember listening to a podcast when guy said that he liked the ultra violent Vietnam comics from the 90s, the 80s, sorry. Ran for a period of time, and jingoistic and all. You shouldn't be reading these things today. I'm not allowed anyway. But that's his guilty pleasure. He loved those kind of things. It speaks to some. Comics speak to us somewhere inside of us. I think. Jim's guilty pleasure is Misty, obviously.
I do feel really guilty for I remember starting off, so I've got 3 daughters, so my wife and 3 daughters, 4 women in the house, and I was sitting drawing away, and they kind of kept noticing. And my wife came to one and said, "Listen, 'cause sometimes I pin stuff up on the wall if I'm, kind of thinking about things." And she said, "Listen, it's a thing with the boobs, or just with the big boobs. Could you just maybe tone it down?" I didn't realize. I just like, oh, okay, right, okay. Or if I'd be reading sometimes as a comic artist, you think, well, how does another artist solve that problem? There's with anatomy or buildings or something. How does somebody else solve that problem? And so you look through and you go, oh, okay, right, okay. And there'd just be, spandex models huge boobs and these amazing physiques and everything, and they'll be studying. Yeah. So every time they come into the room with dad, and as you're saying, that guilty pleasure, like as if I'm looking at porno, and I just and it's just the X-Men.
Yeah.
My guilty pleasure will be Uber. It's a comic no one's really ever heard of. Sort of super soldier Captain America back in the day, but the Nazis have their version and the British trying to recreate it, and they're instead of having gigantic juggernaut tanks, they have these people who only one in so many thousand survived the serum, and they have these weird powers and stuff. And it's very gruesome, and I don't know why I like it, but it's a guilty pleasure. I look at it and I go, I should like this, it's
Oh yeah, okay. All right. I suppose then, yeah, one that would jump out in that kind of vein, Crossed,
oh yeah, I know.
like that.
No.
That like extremely funny and graphic, where it's just what's going on, and then it was like I read, I think, the first two volumes of the like what would have been the original kind of run of it, and it was like just kind of dropped off interest because it was just like it's the same hook kind of coming, and I don't think I'm getting it, or I'm not the intended audience for it or whatever. But then there was like a spin-off, and I think it was something like Crossed, Wish You Were Here, or something like that. And it was basically like this group that had found like an island in the middle of a lake. They had basically isolated themselves so that the crossed people couldn't find them, and it was all kind of around that. So it kind of pulled away a bit from like the extreme of the main title. So it did. So it was actually like there was a bit, to me anyway, it seemed like there was a bit more going on to it, and enjoyed a couple of volumes of that. But the original, from whence it came, yeah, I'd say, yeah, you would put that under like guilty pleasure, because there would be a lot of people on the bus just like, what is he reading there?
I actually asked a young lad working in Subcity, does he have any books like just of push the envelope? And I just meant high concept ideas. He went, I've got one for you. And he took down Cross, there you go. And a particular page obviously have been opened quite a few times because it fell open on this big George Perez diorama type thing, or what it was called, I went, oh, no. That wasn't me. I haven't read it, although I read one story about British soldiers, I think it was. They're caught in the farmhouse. I thought it was quite good. Well, again, very, very violent. But the whole cross thing, it's just passed me by a little bit, like a lot of things pass me by.
Yeah.
But yeah, guilty pleasures. It's funny, isn't it?
Yeah.
People always say, "Oh, I've no guilty pleasures,"
Yeah.
and then all of a sudden, actually, yeah.
Yeah.
What do you think of the state of comics today? Are they better than they used to be? Have they gone off into track a little bit?
But for me, I think it's better than like when I first started reading, and through my teens as well. But again, it could be just like availability of it and the knowledge of the variety of stories, because like it would have been, again, you had the British titles that were available like in the kind of late 80s, 2000 AD, and then the kind of big titles of Marvel. Like I didn't really get into DC until like it's in 20s, because for like the area I was in, it was like that. It was all Marvel, so it was, because Marvel was big at the time. You had the X-Men comics, the cartoon, sorry, X-Men and Spider-Man at the time. So there was a lot of that going on. So yeah, what was I on about? Yeah, on a state. So yeah, it's just the variety of stories, seeing more styles. So it is. The existence of the small press is wonderful. So it is. Like when I was growing up, I honestly never thought that such a thing could exist in Ireland, at least. Probably like possibly might have considered it in other countries and that, but like because again of the titles that you're taking in, like to me, comics was something other countries did. It wasn't something Ireland, even though we had like people from Ireland actually doing it when I was growing up, just again didn't know. But it was very much, and it was a strange, and again, it could be just because I had more at the time for Marvel than other titles. It was again, and it's not even like London for comics, it's like New York. Like in my head, it was like if you want to do comics, you get on a plane, you go to New York and you do comics sort of thing. Never, even though like definitely through all of my school time, I made comics with either family or friends. Like we made our own comics. We had a weekend, draw our own little 4 pages, had a massive stable of different characters and stuff like that. But never thought that you'd take the next logical step where it's like, let's build up like a kind of a grassroots community. So it is for people that want to start out into comics, because of course you can work at Image and Marvel and DC, that are like the big companies and that, but you still have to start somewhere. And there's plenty of people that would be totally happy doing it in the small press, because they're like have absolute creative control. So it is, I can go off in any direction that I want, and it would be more kind of outside limitations upon you. So it would be, so it'd be time and finances more often, that kind of thing, and maybe reach the audience. But the internet helps somewhat now. Like even if you're in Ireland, you can reach people in other countries and just be like, you know, here's this small little press company in Ireland, and we have like 5 or 6 50-page comics. So we do, and they're all of different stuff. So you know, there might be something there for you. Yeah, it was the existence of, like, obviously all the titles and that, but the existence of the community, because there has to be people that would, if that community didn't exist, they don't take the next step into moving beyond someone that might just write a script or draw their own little comics at home, to stepping out into the community then and saying, right, let's find an artist, let's find a writer. How do I go about doing this? How do I go about publishing? How do I get at a convention? That sort of thing. And then just, where do you want to go with it? You know, do you want to keep it in the indies? Do you want to move up to the big publishers? That sort of thing. And yeah, like, I suppose you have the reality then of trying to do all of that. Like, you obviously have to have certain things in place that allow you to do that. You know, like if you're working 2 or 3 jobs, you have little to no time and energy to do stuff. It's hard to do it that way. So there's a certain amount of kind of limitation for a group of people that, if everything was equal, they might be making comics now, but they're not. And it's not necessarily the comics' fault. It's just the nature of the world that we live in, sort of thing. So yeah, like overall, I think it is good, just because more and more people seem to want to do it. There are lots of people excited to do it. What more people in general seem to like, definitely with the indie and small press, willing to pick up and support, you know, local creators, which is great as well, because like with anything, like I've had discussions with even just bands and stuff like that with friends, where they're like, you know, why would you go and see the small band from the next town over for £5 when you could go and see the big show, like down at the Tree Arena or whatever like that. And it's just like, yeah, but would you not like to support them and see where they get to as well?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
you know, and I think there would be a certain amount of that with comics as well. Like, you know, oh, it's a surefire thing. If you go and you pick up your Batman, your Superman, Wonder Woman, Spider-Man, whatever, like the big titles, you know, you're reasonable. And some people might think, well, if I pick up a small press, it's an unknown, so it is. Don't know if I like it or anything like that. But it's like, at the same time, sure, you have to experience that with the superheroes. If you're reading those at some point, there was a point where you're like, you know, oh, I've heard about the Superman, and you're down in the newsagents or the comic store, and you see the rack of Superman or Spider-Man, whatever, and it's your first one to pick it up. You know, so it's just try to get more of that directed towards small press and indie, so that it just becomes bigger and bigger. I suppose that's the thing with the state. I'd like it to be much more like with other countries, like obviously America, but like other countries in Europe, even like France and Belgium and those. Like you don't necessarily consider them when in comics, but then like when you start to widen your view and you look over and say, wow, they're like they have it, and like some of those countries treat it as like the fourth medium sort of thing. It's to that level they respect the medium, and you're just like, you know, can you send over a couple of people that get that and just like do something in this country as well? And
Is it that Irish thing that we like you too, but not if they're too big? You know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. We do this because it's a lot of fun. I say this every time. We did City of Clowns. I had a ball doing City of Clowns, you know. And it was a time when I was writing two prose books. We had two series on the go. We were doing something else. And I was up to here, and I couldn't concentrate most days because I had so much to think about. But City of Clowns was so much fun. When I was finished with it, now I know it's not perfect, but I pick that off the shelf sometimes, and I just flick through it and go, oh yeah, you know, it is what it is. It's a quirky idea, and it speaks to me personally. But this is why I do it. I am not interested in working for Marvel or anybody else. People say that, but they're really thinking, but Marvel came calling, you know. No, I think you give up too much independence, you know. And I can write any story I want. I'm just hand it to Jim and say, "What do you think, Jim?" If we were working for a beer place, we've got to write about, you know, a vet with PTSD this week.
yeah,
You know, how do you get yourself in that mind space? You know, so the good thing about independence, there's bad things about it. But if anyone's starting off, we always say the same thing: don't dive into it. Start small, but hang on. You know, there's room on that door. You know, if you just hold on. And everyone wants to tell you no all the time. For some reason, you can't do that. You can't do that. You can't do that. Well, why not? You know, but it's a fantastic thing. To, you know, making comics. It's just, you know, it's not easy, but it's just the best thing I've done. You know,
yeah,
I've enjoyed the last few years with this man here, immensely. You know, and that's what I believe. It's you know, if I didn't do this, I wouldn't have met yourself. I wouldn't have met him. You know, him. There's so many nice people I've met doing this. You meet a few oddballs as well, but that's every job, everything you do. And
yeah,
this takes up a lot of my time and effort, you know. But when we get the book and it's finished, and I've got it, I go, oh, it's fantastic. I'll just sell a few thousand copies of that. But we're already on to the next one or next two or next three, and in my mind, I've written something else, and it's just fabulous. So if anyone's out there, if there is someone listening to this, give it a shot. Dig your nails in. It is great. I've met so many nice people. It's I have to say it has saved me in a way. Even the Friday hellos, you know, it's a time for me to reflect, and to keep going, and say, what have I done properly this week? What can I do better? You know, um, well, recently, I told this to Derek Keogh. We had Derek Keogh on. He's brilliant. He is just Iceman, ice. He's just antifreeze in there. He's a cool dude. And I spent a weekend. I'm writing another science fiction thing, that'll hopefully be the next maybe January, February. And I spent days trying to figure out a slogan for an ad campaign for Alien Moisturizer. Right? And my wife was going, "Oh, see, Jesus." They're the things that I spend a week on. It occupies every second of my thought when I'm not doing my job or not doing something else. That's what I'm sitting there thinking. It's going around in my head. I never got a chance to do that kind of crap if I hadn't gotten into comics.
Yeah.
And I've a lot to be thankful for. I mean, especially this guy here. He's saved me more times than you can imagine. Because I've wanted to just give him a go, And a lot of things, what I do, I try to impress him, make him laugh, And if I've done that,
Listen, you're in a really, really, really bad place. If I'm the one who sees you, you're in a bad place. No, I this has been terrific. The whole two pugs thing. I mean, we've waxed on about it at length. I'm the grateful one. I don't know what I did to deserve this anything or thing, and I'm unbelievably grateful. So I can't take any credit at all. It's all down to Ray. But Stephen, I just want to ask you before you go: do you feel you and Irish comic news are in the like eye of the storm? Ireland's a small country. I would never. I don't know how I would have ever met Ray if it wasn't for Twitter and and that cross pollination, everything. How do you approach it, or what do you think? Because everybody knows Irish, as far as I know, everybody knows Irish comic news. I wouldn't have read. I don't know if I would have met Ray without that, as Twitter and Irish and that Friday shout out that you do, and the competition that you do every year is terrific. That's a really good idea, and you hear different people who follow you, and that person just lives down in Dublin, and there's the Enniskillen con, and there's this con and that con. Do you feel like you're like the I don't know, you're like the drug dealer? You're like the Scarface. So I have to thank you for putting me in contact with Ray. I owe you. I'll sort you out. Thank you very much. He's mine. Nobody else is getting it. So that door's closed. But you've.
It is true. When I started, Irish Comic News was a resource for everything, and it still is. Art Picks shows you what the people are doing, artists doing, reviews, and going back to 7 questions. These were all very valuable because people are honest. I've seen reviews on other American websites, and these are paid for. These are written by somebody. Asked and answered. Say this kind of thing. That there's a push on here, the way things are phrased. With Irish Comic News, it was a huge resource, and it still is. And I get on and I go, what's new? What's the top of the menu? The first page on the screen. And I wouldn't have found like Donna Black, people done like this, without seeing Irish Comic News, And again, so many people have been associated with it and have gone on to be fairly famous, And we need something like that. It is, as he's saying, a nexus of something, the eye of the storm, the spider in the center of the web, feeling the vibrations, recommending things. No, it's true. If I was starting off again, the first thing I'd do, I'd ask yourselves, recommend an artist. This is what I'm looking for, He's signed a contract in blood, so I can't get out of it. But you know what I mean? Irish Comic News, it's the center of some things that you don't realize. But again, unless you're into comics, you don't know it's there.
Yeah.
And
How much of your day does it take up? I mean, does it take a huge?
Yeah.
Well, let's see, like say before the pandemic, especially with when I was doing the art picks, like when I started with the art picks, I think I had, like I would keep a list basically, but when I started, I think I had something like 40 artists. Now that's line and colors. So it would, because it was very much like it's an art pick. The colorists are also can go in there because like they could be coloring some artist who's not in the Irish comic scene at all, but their art is still there. So I had about 40 or that. And then it just exploded over time. I think there was a period of maybe two and a half years where it just went up. I kept going like nearly every week. There was a new name coming in, and then when the Instagram kicked in as well, it's like I had over 300 profiles to keep on top of, and it was a monthly thing. So it would have been like 8 hours minimum to do one art picks. So it was. And that was not including the time taken to find the art. This was putting together the post. And then it got so big that it ended up having to be broken down into multiple parts because it would take too long to load the art picks if you just bundle every piece in. So yeah, you had that. The reviews, they weren't as regimented. So they weren't just the nature of it. Like you don't have new material constantly out. So it wouldn't take as much. Like at the minute, it's kind of quiet, but it would, I don't know, like maybe a week, like over a week, it would be an 8 hour thing if I had something on, like if I was doing a review or if I was doing an art picks. And then you've other stuff that I wouldn't really include in the time, which is when I'm on social media, if I would do a quick, like I've little lists that are kind of hidden away in Twitter where it's just like I can go in and it's like these are a list of all artists and set it to a certain mode and you can just get like these are all the art piece or pictures that they post. They may not all be art pieces, but you can just go down through it and say, okay, retweet those, see if anyone's got promotion tweets for new comics or Kickstarters, do that. Which, you know, it may be 30 minutes to 60 minutes in a day spread out, but like you're just like I'd be on Twitter anyway. It's just, you know, including on that. So yeah, there's a bit of time to it, but like it's like stuff with the two of you and with various other artists, writers and that as well, where you see it down the pipe that these new connections are made. There's new projects happening where you're like, you don't know for sure, but you're kind of like, well, maybe they might have made the connection because Irish Comic News was doing the work that they were doing. So that would be a big motivating factor on it. It's like the reviews itself, to a certain extent, would be to have content out there that people can point to, because you know you can do your own tweets, but there's always this nice factor to it, is where you can point, oh look, this website, they're featuring the art for an upcoming comic or Kickstarter, or here's a review they wrote about it. So it just adds a bit more for the team that's putting out a title.
Yeah,
I think you say right here. Here's another website for it.
and on top of that, you're doing news, general features and this and that, and there are other things going on. And one of the things that it's really bothers me, it really bugs me, is that the most successful people are on social media a lot, and they're pushing and PJ has a blog that he does, and I'm like, God Almighty, right? Okay, hang on, whoa, and it's like too much of a mountain when I think about it. I've got to go. Okay, I've got to, like, there's a different compartment of my brain, and I go, I'm so focused on what I'm doing, even when I get a script in or something, I'm going, okay, I've got to stop literally stop doing this and focus on that. I can't multitask on that. And people will always say, well, you've got to get on social media and you've got to put yourself out there. So Irish Comic News has been a huge help in that for me, for me to do that, because I can't do all of that anything that takes me away from the drawing table it's got to be essential. Like, how long can I put this off for? Can I put it off another hour? Can I put it off another 2 hours? Can I put it off till tomorrow? I'll do it tomorrow. So you're right there in the middle of all that, really. You're facilitating. As you say, there was nothing in Ireland. You've built this thing. There was nothing in Ireland connected. The internet comes along and connects all of these people, and there you are. It seems to me, anyway, that you're in the middle of it all. You're really in the. And I remember, I'll never forget the first time I got some of my art on the choice, the pick list, the hit list, and I was like, just such a real buzz,
Yeah.
It's a real biz. I got chosen that week or whatever it was. It's brilliant. It's just such a brilliant. Do you have any plans going forward? Like, can you see, right, we can be more efficient this way, or we'll try and bring in a bit more of this or that?
I'm not sure, because I would still defer to David. Like, David's the editor-in-chief there, and we haven't really come together to kind of figure where does it go. But it's definitely over the course of the pandemic, when you have a bit more time because you don't have a lot of things on, it's like, right, is there more stuff that you could do or change it to improve the way that you're kind of promoting the community ultimately? Because I love doing the art picks, and it's for that sort of stuff that you're saying, where it's like you have all the artists in together, because that was a conscious thing for myself anyway, where it was like there's a lot of artists in the Artists Alley who may or may not be doing comic art specifically, but they were amenable to being included in the art picks. And then you have the small press, so it was like put them all in together, and then like you're in there with like the likes of Nick Roche and Mooney and all the bigger names that you would know straight away, because just they're working with the biggest companies, and it's just
the greats.
yeah. And to try and have it just like you're all in this pool, this collective creative pool sort of thing, and it's you're all still making comic art basically, and obviously they're working for these bigger companies or that, but that's not to say that, like what you're saying earlier, it's like you persevere with it. There will be stumbling blocks there, but if you're at the early stage where it's kind of like it's a bit rough art sort of thing, but you're seeing yourself on a website and you think, right, okay, well I'm in there, with real artists sort of thing. It might motivate them a bit more. Sort of thing.
It's validation as well,
but it's to try and draw more people into the fold of the community. So it is, because like with this kind of creative work, you can be quite isolated when you're doing the work, because you're spending hours in the writing or drawing, coloring, whatever it is. So it's to try and bring it in more that way as well, and then make connections to hopefully get into projects once you get to that level where it's like, yeah, your work's really come on now, and here's a new writer, and they're looking for an artist, and they'd be willing to take a chance because you're kind of peers on that level.
Yeah, it's just terrific. It's just a really, that's the word, isn't it? It's community. That's the thing, that it is a community. We are it's such a small niche within a small population on a small island.
Stephen, it's been fantastic having you on. Just for the suit alone, it's just been a pleasure.
There you go.
That's it.
Yes.
Here we go.
I have to have you back sometime.
Yes.
See what he's wearing then. You'd have to up your game, So.
No, again, I'm matching
that. Stephen, it's been a pleasure. Thanks very much for coming on. And as always, Jim, it's been a pleasure and fun. God bless,
Thanks,
guys.
everybody. Thanks, Stephen. Thank you.
Good.
Take care, everyone.
See you. Bye
See
bye.
ya.